You know, I hate that the reality of our current time period gives me so much to talk about. And it was funny, just 2 weeks ago, I was lamenting having stuff that I would want to talk about for this mental health vlog because I just wasn't sure what I would want to put out there about myself. But honestly speaking, I'm tired. I'm mentally, spiritually exhausted by the status quo of the situation, by how many people can say things so blithely about the reality of racism. We watched in Kenosha as a young man who at 17 should have stayed home, shouldn't have felt the urge to arm himself, go to a peaceful protest, and be the only reason why there was any conflict in the first place. But you watch people spin that into the narrative of, well, he was trying to protect. Protect from what? Cops in Kenosha shot a father in his back 7 times, left him paralyzed. The people there decided that they wanted to march against that. Kyle, who was already raised to believe that people that don't look like him, pray like him, have the same ideology as him, are open targets, and anybody who sympathizes with them are open targets, was the powder keg. And there are a lot of little American created powder kegs being crafted every day. And now they have been told that if they do this and they get a judge that has been raised to be a little powder keg themselves, they can get away with it. And as a black mom, I watch so many people weigh in about, well, what if it had been a black child? It wouldn't have been. I don't think you understand the difference in how we have to treat our sons. And I'm not acting like black children aren't their own little powder cakes. It's the fact that we have to teach our kids in this society how to survive, period. And one of the things we teach them is to try not to look threatening. And it doesn't work. And I found that out painfully yesterday. As some lady named Kathy literally blamed Tamir Rice for his own death. That baby was 12 years old. When I looked at him, I saw my son. Like most people with a little bit of empathy should. Like anybody who is a parent should. But women like Kathy, they're their own little baked goods of white supremacy. The women that are from the cradle taught to coddle, uplift, and protect this fuckery. And for her, she wanted to justify while a 12-year-old who was playing in the park with a toy could be misconstrued as a threat because at 12 he was tall and heavy for his age. It's always something to justify the disposableness of black lives versus preserving little powder kegs like Kyle who willingly showed that they're a threat. And think about kids like Dylan Roof. Walked into a church with 9 people, prayed with them, realized in the middle of it that what he was doing was wrong, but still pushed because he was so indoctrinated towards hate. And hate is an abyss that you cannot stop feeding once you start to give into it. It does not give you the returns you think it's going to, but you are so baked into the ideology of it that letting go seems impossible for white people. And like I said on my Bonnet Chronicles on Friday, and I mean it, I can't even get mad at those who are openly embracing hate because they don't know any better and they really think that it's helping them. It's the people that act indifferent, the people who can say stuff like, well, Tamir was 5'7" and 171 pounds, and that's why that unfortunate incident. You mean his murder happened? Well, the other white women this week who decided to talk about where racism isn't open and where it is openly accepted. Because you still foolishly believe that the South is somehow more racist than the North. And it's like, if you don't exist as a targeted person, whether you're black, a person of color, be it Asian, be it Arabic, be it Jewish, be it anybody deemed different, if you're LGBT, especially the T, you cannot speak on what is open because you are not the target of said hate. Yet so many white people seem to have your impression because you live in such a bubble. You don't seem to understand that you say things like, oh, well, in New York it's not that open because, I live around your types. The fact that your mentality thinks that your proximity to black people, whether you work with them or live around them, means racism just isn't as open because you might not get shared experience from us because we can't trust you to relay our shared experience like that. You have no right telling people where racism is open. I grew up in New York during the 80s, especially, where Bernard Goetz was allowed to shoot people on the train because he was supposedly being robbed. He was dubbed a vigilante instead of a fucking murderer. That's the reality of the situation. 5 young men were sent to jail for a crime they didn't commit. Their lives irreparably damaged by a system that was not set to protect us, but was set to make sure that people felt that these young boys who did nothing wrong were animals already, because our children are viewed as threats automatically. And you who don't understand what that's like, because you can raise your son with arrogance and aggression. You can raise your son to take pictures at 9 years old with a fucking assault rifle. Because it's cutesy when you do it. It's patriotic when your white child does it. But our kids can't walk in the neighborhood with a fucking hoodie and not be a threat. And you will justify it all the time. Living in 2 Americas is exhausting. But what makes it worse are the so-called allies who refuse to see, who stay blind to the situation until they can't. So shit like what happened in Kenosha goes down, and you just want to act brand new and surprised that it's happening. Oh, never again will I not vote for the justice on the ballot. Never again will I let my vote go to waste. You shouldn't have in the first place. But you are all part of the system that continues to break black minds. And so many of you act like you care, but you're going to continue to do the same thing because you feel safe where you are. You feel comfortable in your level of life. And we are just people to pity instead of human beings to empathize with. And that is why this problem isn't going away. And it shouldn't take people like me telling you that you need to be more human to fellow human beings. I don't understand who raised you, but I don't get why it's so easy for you, for clicks and views, to rally against a movie about black women who were empowered by their father. Your so-called feminism against King Richard really came across as somebody who didn't get the point or the message of a movie about having a strong family structure and how that could build you up to the success that some people will never get to. But yet, this young white girl decided that, oh, how dare they take Serena and Venus' story and make it about their dad. Their dad is a whole part of their success story, and it was their loving tribute to him. But I can't expect somebody who wouldn't understand the culture, who doesn't want to understand the culture, but wants to weigh in, because that kind of weighing in gets them the most engagement and relevance to understand that. No, for people like her, it's a slam dunk to shit upon this story. And that is the reality of surviving in this particular time period. And it's hell to me because we have the ability to know better. But too many of you don't want to know better. Too many of you would rather what about and what if and deflect. You don't want to embrace the reality of the situation. You want to lament that this is the end of peaceful protest. But that doesn't matter in the long run. Peaceful protest versus actual actions that can get us better legislation, that can get us better protections, that could get us police reform. Some of you act like you care about the situation, but you won't do your bare minimum to change the status quo. And then you look to people like me and say, well, what can we do? You take all this energy to worry about something that really doesn't matter. You want to march on something? March your ass to a polling place when it is time to vote for school board, to the president. You should be informed on who represents you. Even if you don't have a child in the school system, it should be important to you who is on that board. But some of you don't care, and it shows. You will get on social media and lament about how Black Lives Matter and how what happened in Kenosha upsets you. But you refuse to do your due diligence and to take that energy that you have to march and protest and lament that peaceful protest can't be a thing. And let me tell you something that might fuck with your mind. Being black, there was never a protest that I went to that I felt was going to be 100% peaceful, because we have always been met with aggression. Anytime we have marched, we've known that the cops, perhaps the military, the National Guard, were going to be there, and that any slight provocation could mean that we would die that day. So all of you lamenting peaceful protests being gone, y'all are caked in privilege. And I know some of you don't want to hear that because you are based in your feelings over our reality. But I feel like today, especially on Sunday, I need to give you this sermon because you're not getting it. You say you want to be anti-racist, but you won't do your bare minimum. Organize, vote, make sure the people around you do the right thing, because that's a lot of work, and it's much more easier for you to look the part and protest. And for the fact that you worry about your safety at protests, when that has never been a luxury for black people. This shows me the level of mentality that we're up against in this fight for our lives. And it's exhausting. It is exhausting existing in this world where you have been othered all your life, where you've heard things as young as a fucking 11-year-old, like, you sure don't have the body of a child. And they use it to justify our sexual exploitation, murdering us. So many of our kids have lost their lives these last few years. When they were talking about Kyle the other day, I was talking about Khalif, who went to jail at 16 for a backpack that he didn't steal. I talk about Trayvon, who was just walking in his neighborhood. Tamir, who was playing in the park. Tyree, who ran from the police because by his age at 13, he realized that his safety was not in their hands. And they justified his fears by shooting that little 13-year-old in the back. Ayana, who was sleeping on the fucking couch with her grandmother, who didn't wake up because they raided her house and put a bullet in her 7-year-old brain. Jordan Edwards, who was at a party with his brothers, who got into the car. They were leaving. They were complying. They were doing everything they were supposed to do. And he still died. He had a future. His family loved him. And they lost him. And there are so many of those stories. But they don't see our kids as kids. And that is the reality of surviving in this world. I think about my son every day. What I want to do to make life better for him, so that he doesn't have to go proving his humanity to people, so that his existence isn't one of scorn or a threat. And I know it's impossible, because when you have women like Kathy saying that a 12-year-old child somehow played a part in the racist thinking that took his life, that somehow his height and weight justify his unjust death, How am I supposed to look my child in the face and tell him it's going to be all right? I can't do that. I'm tired of our hashtags. I'm tired of seeing our children in coffins instead of caps and gowns. I'm tired of seeing a system that rewards hate. And if you're tired of it, I need more than performative stunts at this point. I need more than marching at this point. I need you to understand what's at stake here. Some of you really got it and dig your heels in deep that voting and that doing your basic civic duties don't matter, but we have seen that it does. The system works against so many of us, and so many of you have power within this system that you let go to waste. And then you complain about, well, what can I do to help the situation? You have the ability. They're not looking at you funny when you're in the voting lines. They're not trying to quell your right to vote yet. But they are going after people like mine. So if you see this and you realize that this is fucked up, you need to do whatever you can to help us. Because we can't do it alone. And this is not easy for me to say because I was raised in the mentality that I have to have my own back. But I realized growing up and being a black adult that I can't do this on my own. I need everybody who considers themselves a true ally to get your shit together. And take all that energy that you want to lament, whether racism is open in your neighborhood, because you're not going to see it anyway, or whether or not something's going on in somewhere else, to focus on your neighborhoods. Focus on who's representing you, because it's important. It is so important to our survival. And right now, honestly speaking, surviving in this time period, when we know we should know better, but we don't. When people are openly embracing being awful, it is a struggle. And if you want to make our burdens less, you have to do your part. I'm tired, y'all. I don't want to have to make vlogs like this, but it's exhausting. And seeing the amount of ignorance this week, I couldn't wait. I felt like if I sat on this, it would fester within me. And it is exhausting seeing how many of you are ignorant and worse yet, apathetic to the realities of the situation. Kyle gets to live. He took 2 lives. He injured another. He shouldn't have been there. I don't care what your brain tries to say to justify it. There was no reason for a 17-year-old child to cross state lines and go into a place that he didn't belong. As a parent, you shouldn't be condoning that kind of behavior. But some of you do, because you are raising these little balls of chaos and terror because you think it's cutesy. Because you think that's power. The rest of us are just trying to keep our kids alive. That is the reality of existing within white supremacy. And some of you are really helping keep this system in place, whether you want to believe that or not. But if you are watching this and got to this point of the vlog, I hope you understand the power that you are wasting, the power that you could be using to help turn this around, because this shit shouldn't be normal. It really shouldn't. And the only people who have the ability to truly change the system, that won't feel the press from it, that won't feel cut off, that won't feel completely targeted, that could do it covertly enough to where by the time the people who want the oppression, who want the norm, who want us in fear and dead, can't do anything about it, just sit and hem and haw about not being able to peaceful protest. Stop putting a performative action over actual action, because you're wasting all of our time. It's not going to stop our kids from being profiled. It's not going to stop us from being killed if you're not going to do your part to help us. I'm going to wrap this up. I'm tired of lecturing grown people. But I feel like if I don't speak up, I don't know what else I could do. I feel like there are a lot of people that just need that frank mama tone to understand the severity of the situation. And some of yous just show that you weren't raised right. When you blame a child for their own death, when you blame people who all we've done is exist as black people, and we have to deal with the constant othering of our skin tone. And if you don't understand the psychological trauma that can cause a person, I don't know what to tell you. But I know that some of you really need an empathy implant. Either way, I'm going to stop here, upload this. It's no frills. I'm not trying to be one of those fancy vloggers. I want to speak the truth. And I feel like a lot of people waste time on production and everything else. This is about mental health. I'm not here for people's comfort. I am here to speak the truth. And if you rock with that, thank you for watching. If you don't, kick rocks, because I'm done. I'm not here for people's feelings. I'll see yous on the next one.